Father Decker took a black feathered pen and dipped it in an inkwell. He signed his name to the banknote. Instantly, a lightning bolt illuminated the window. It was followed seconds later by a loud cackling sound. Startled, Jimmy shrieked. He hid his shaking hands in his coat pocket and fingered the wooden hopping frog his grandfather had carved for him. Droplets splashed on the window. Then the heavens opened and rain fell like buckets of water. Banker leaned over his desk and pled. "It's a cloudburst. Please stay here with me until it passes. Keep your children safe and dry." Mother sighed. "The older 5 children will be home from school in a few hours. I hope it will let up soon." Father shrugged, then relaxed in his chair. "Tell me, Ed, what's this income tax law all about?" The banker grinned. "Ha! The government wants in on our great wealth." Joe Sr. shook his head. "I would not need a bank loan if I were a rich man." Banker Ed let a hand fall to his stout tummy. "There is one thing in your favor. The government has decided to regulate interest rates. In the past, some establishments has charged as much as 33%. That alone would wipe most farmers out. The imposed maximum is now set at 8.9%. Father Decker tried to do the math figures in his head. "Oh, that's good, I guess." The air grew thicker. Jimmy shivered, so Mother held him close to her and Baby Joe. 3 short rings sounded from a box on the wall. "That's my ring," said the banker. "The downstairs lobby gets a long and a short buzz." Jimmy had never seen a telephone before. He watched the banker walk to the wall, pick up a handle, and speak into a round piece. "Hello?" Ed's voice rang like a bell. After a brief interchange, his voice grew gruff and huffy. He slammed the phone down. "The Miami River is rising rapidly. She's gonna flood." He extended his hand. "Good to see you folks again. Anyone going east over the river had better go at once." Joe and Esther Decker sprang from their chairs, carrying their youngest sons in their arms. They flew down the stairs and out the bank doors. Father secured Jimmy in the back seat, unleashed the horses, and climbed in the driver's seat. "Mo and Joe, yah!" The buggy wheels sloshed down the wet road towards the river. School children had gathered near the riverbank to watch the great Miami River flood. It was such a spectacle. Wagons and carriages were lined up on both sides of the bridge waiting to cross, while men and boys piled sandbags to hold the water back. The horses, that had not seemed to mind the rain, grew skittish when they reached the bridge. Dad calmed them with his voice. There, steady!" They were flanked by a red buggy in the rear and a brown one in front. The trio worked their way to the opposite shore. A large tree came down river and hit the bridge. A man standing on the shore shouted, "Close the road, it's too dangerous." Father Decker pushed the horses faster. Jimmy felt the buggy slide in the mud when it hit earth again. Then, with a horrible, loud crack, the bridge collapsed. Jimmy turned his head and saw the red carriage tumble into the rapids. Suddenly, 2 wagons on the riverbank slid. Time slowed down. People flung themselves to the ground, grasping for anything. Down they went, along with their carts and horses. Jimmy heard the people scream. He screamed long after their voices had stopped. Tears stung his eyes. Mom and Dad were crying too. He just wanted to be home in a nice warm bed with the scent of sugar cookies coming from the firebox. Jimmy could hear his father praying, "Please help us and our neighbors." Finally, Dad turned slowly so Jimmy could see his soft and sad eyes. "Jimmy, you were the last person to cross over the great Miami Bridge at Troy alive."
Whose point of view is this being told from? Is it omniscient? Is it Jimmy's point of view? Because that makes a difference.
So who's the narrator?
Who's the narrator? Well, I mean, it's third person, but there's a difference between third person omniscient, who will jump and who will show us all the thoughts, and third person limited, that's focused on one character and kind of what they're seeing without being right in their head first person. So it seems to me that even though you switch to a memory, it should still be little boy Jimmy's kind of point of view.
Yeah.
And thus everything needs to come as if it's coming from this little boy. So you have him reacting to the storm outside, and then you have this section with the banker and Father Decker talking about income taxes, which I'm fine with. I mean, I don't think a little boy would exactly remember that, but historically you could put that in.
Right.
But I still feel like we need Jimmy's point of view, wondering what's an income tax, why is this so important, or something to keep us grounded in Jimmy.
Yeah.
A couple of other things from this first page for me. So the lightning bolt illuminates the window, then thunder, Jimmy shrieks, so it's a very outward, like he can't hide that, but then he tries to hide his shaking hands in his coat pocket. And it just seemed at odds that he shrieks out loud, but then tries to hide his shaking hands, because he can't exactly hide if he's just shrieked. But I could totally see that maybe he's just trying to cower away from the storm as a 3-year-old boy.
How about shuddered?
Shuddered.
Yeah, that might work better if he's trying to act brave. Especially because later on, his mother comforts him. She notices and she comforts him. But that just seemed incongruent to shriek. So I have a question about, the banker leaned over the desk and he pleads, it's a cloudburst, stay here with me until it passes, please keep your children safe and dry. And I'm wondering, why does a banker care?
In reality, what happened is this banker, later in that day, goes and is very heroic in town and rescues a lot of people, but within 3 months is dead from malaria, or not malaria, whatever the disease was.
So what we're saying is this shows that he really is a generous, genuine-hearted person, and he's not just saying that to try to get more business out of these people.
Yeah, but there were still a lot of names, and then they weren't totally consistent. So there's Banker Ed, there's Ed.
Just change them all to Banker Ed.
Who's Joe Senior, and then there's his grandfather and Father Decker, and I'm trying to, and then just the banker. I just would be consistent with whatever name.
And I think if you start with Banker Ed, that's how Jimmy knows him. Like when Father's speaking, he's going to call him that. He's not going to call him Banker Ed like Jimmy does, right?
Yeah. So the dialogue.
But yes, there's definitely got to be some consistency. It was the same thing with like Father Decker, Joe Senior, and then you even have one of the horses named Joe.
Yeah, that was confusing. And I wanted to just, at the very beginning, just say I really liked the imagery of the lightning bolt illuminating the window and the loud crackling sound.
Just a little thing, I would take out the instantly, because if it's sudden, just have the lightning bolt crash, don't tell us instantly it crashed.
So this lightning bolts are always instant.
Yeah, that too.
So this wooden frog, this wooden hobbit frog that his grandfather carved for him, is that mentioned at any point before we get here? Because it seems like a comfort item for him.
I almost feel like this is where he would say, don't go. It's too dangerous.
Oh yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean? Instead of up here, I almost feel like he would say that down here.
See what Nikki's saying, if you took that first, it's a cloudburst, stay here, keep your children safe, we have older 5, put that down closer where it's
just
rising
before
rapidly.
the phone rings.
Or even when he tells them, the river is rising rapidly, she's going to flood. Please stay here, keep your children safe, but we have 5 more at home we've got to get home to. And then we know why they're making it. Because I had kind of forgot about that by the time we got here, because they've got to get across.
Yeah. And carrying their youngest sons in their arms. If Jimmy is in their arms, is he in their arms or no?
Well, they picked him up and ran.
So he is in their arms.
Yeah.
So Jimmy needs to be saying...
We need his
to
reaction.
know he's in the arms.
His parents are panicking, or at least
as Jimmy Jimmy's
so
mom swept him up off the floor.
Yeah.
Before he had a chance to.
And how does Jimmy respond to this sudden action? They were just kind of sitting around talking, and now suddenly it's rush, hurry. How does that affect him? He's already afraid of the storm. Now his
Panicking. What
parents are
emotions
panicking.
And he's not necessarily going to understand fully that
You could just say
that urgency.
he gripped the frog in his hand until it started to bite into his skin.
And his other arm was tight around his mother's neck. Maybe even she complains, Jimmy, I gotta loosen up, I gotta breathe, or something.
So show us.
Yeah. The big thing that I wrote down for page 2 was this whole second part, it needs to be expanded and focused.
Slow down.
And really show us just how close Jimmy and his family came to death. Again, we need Jimmy's voice. You've done what I've done. I wrote the action and I didn't get the emotional content in there. And so we need Jimmy's emotional content. Now they really are in danger, big time. So
I would almost disagree. I don't know that he needs to be panicked, because then you have this part about the school children are gathered. It was such a spectacle. He might think it's really interesting until everything kind of unravels.
Just some kind of emotion, whatever you want it to be.
Something.
All right, so down here, when the ridge is going, I need to expand that.
Because right here,
Slow it
they
down.
were flanked, because right here, they were flanked by the red buggy in the rear and the brown one in the front. The trio worked their way to the opposite shore. Okay, so that's the only line that tells me they're on the bridge. I don't even know they're on the bridge. Like, I had to go back and look. When you said, because, okay, they reached the bridge.
When they reached the bridge.
They reached the bridge, and then they worked slowly, they worked their way to the
So
opposite.
again, I think we need like sensory, like what do the horses' hooves sound like as they move from dirt road to bridge?
Was a wooden bridge.
Tell us what the river looks like, because you have a large tree coming down the river, but we already.
Does it go in front of them, behind them? Where's the tree hitting?
Like that river's gonna be loud, and it's gonna be worse now because now it's raining, so it's increasing. Is this a covered wagon that they're in? Is Jimmy feeling the rain on his face? It's cold, it stings.
Is Jimmy watching the river? Is Jimmy watching the people that are about to be sucked up by the river? Because
the bridge collapsed. It was like, I want to see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And hear it.
Yes.
And feel it. Because if Jimmy's the last one across and he's maybe feeling the wagon start to drop out behind him before it hits solid ground again, and
The show not tell.
And again, I think he would also kind of see that those people behind him, that red buggy. You mentioned the red buggy behind him, and that the red buggy doesn't make it. I think he would notice that.
He heard the crack of the bridge, and so he turned his head. He watched the carriage go in. Okay, what did he see? Did he see the people going? And we want slow it down. He locked eyes with,
So the reason this is his first memory is because it has such an emotional resonance with him, and that's what we need to feel. We need to feel that emotional resonance that solidifies that as a first memory.
Father Decker pushed the horses faster. He's boxed in. Can they go faster, and are the horses panicked? Because I don't know if they'd be all that calm during a storm trying to cross a bridge.
No, they wouldn't be.
But I can still see him trying to get
the people in front of him moving faster.
Like that, it definitely shows that impatience, that urgency. But she's got a good point that he can only go so fast before he's slamming in the buggy in front of him. But
So he's not pushing the horses faster, because he's not pushing the horses. He is, show us, don't tell us. Show us what's he doing. Is he moving the reins? Is he saying, go, go, go? What is he doing? Is his hands gripping the reins? Is he...
is he watching the water, watching the buggy in front of him?
Sweat.
Right. So basically,
that's right.
when those floods happen, it's not necessarily that the water was coming over the bridge, but the fact that the bridge coming down the river piles up and then it goes crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe so. I think we need to see that tree sooner, so that we have there's a deadline to get across this bridge. I want to say this. I love your last line. I think that's a great last line for this scene.
This scene has so much potential.
Yeah.
So, and that's why on the first page, I know that you're trying to put the historically correct stuff, but if you have to cut somewhere, cut the bank.
Or you could just cut, there's one thing in your favor, the government has decided to regulate interest rates. Cut the rest of that. That's good, I guess.
It probably is. I just was shocked to find out that it was 33%.
Yeah, that's a lot. But how important is that to the story?
I guess it's not. It's just...
It is, I know. Kill your darlings, right?
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings. Okay.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's come along really good.
Good.